correspondent at The Sun, Martina Vett, and political editor at Geopolitics, Ava Santina. Evans, great to have you and your company this Sunday too. We're going to kick off in your paper, Martina, The Sun, because Sir Richard Barron has written essentially for the paper, talking about defence spending, talking about the threat of Russia.
That's right. Sir Richard Barron writes in The Sun on Sunday saying we've got to act today. Our armed forces are hollowed out. The UK can no longer rely on the US to bail us out. He says we need an extra 10 billion a year on defence. Now, he's the author of the Strategic Defence Review. We are now waiting for the Defence Investment Plan, which basically enacts and puts the money to the Strategic Defence Review. It's been delayed. Now it's expected to come out in May. But there have been lots and lots of warnings and criticism coming at Keir Starmer for the delay of the Defence Investment Plan. Now, it's really interesting what Sir Richard Barron says, because obviously we've got the context of Russia aggression in Ukraine, but also the Iran war going on at the moment. And he says that what's happening in the Middle East should be a wake-up call. Now, there have been lots of reports over the weekend about Keir Starmer's sort of new strategy coming the local elections, where he's expected to lose a lot of seats. And they're saying that Number 10 actually want to pitch Keir Starmer's leadership around national security, and they will announce very shortly an increase in defence spending, because they want to tell the public, look, we cannot afford ourselves to have a leadership contest when there's a conflict in the Middle East, there's Russia, and we've got to put our faith in Keir Starmer's safe hands, where he's going to increase defence spending, he's going to get us closer to the EU, we've got energy security, basically pitch his leadership around these three things. And whether it works or not, it's a different question.
Ava, Sir Keir Starmer's committed, hasn't he, to, 2.5% GDP on defence. Is this his safe place, defence? Is the war safe for Keir Starmer?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you look at the local elections. I mean, I've been travelling around various boroughs around the country, and you think, the last thing that's on anyone's lips at the moment is defence spending. So it's an interesting Westminster strategy to argue that actually, if we can get 2.5% is the quoted figure. If we can get defence spending up to 3%, then perhaps I'll save a few local councillors. It's sort of apples and oranges, because you don't have local boroughs who are in charge of what defence is being spent where. Hackney Council is not in charge of ballistic weapons. So it doesn't really make total sense to me. I can understand the stability argument that, we're safer with Keir Starmer, so please don't punish us locally. But, it does sort of seem like a little bit of, insider, small-brained Westminster thinking, and not really like a proper strategy to save a few councils around the country.
I would say that she's not. I think it's priced in that they're going to lose very heavily in the local elections, and not thinking, we're going to increase defence spending, so we're going to save a few councillors. I think it is the strategy post what happens in May, and it's a pitch to Labour MPs primarily, who might be thinking, right, I want to have my go and see if I can have a leadership contest against Starmer, but in I think it's a message for Labour MPs more than anything else.
But one of the criticisms of Keir Starmer, or maybe it isn't actually, is that on the world stage he's really handled things like a Prime Minister, and domestically that hasn't translated through to his messaging, the narrative of Labour, and that's where the May elections, like we've all discussed here and before, will really hit him.
But I think Martina's right there, because what the argument is that it really is to quell the calm of backbenchers. It's really for them. It's to bolster his support and not trigger a potential leadership contest. If he can get 80 MPs who are unhappy enough with his domestic policy to force a leadership challenge, then that would be disastrous for Keir Starmer. But if he can sort of calm their nerves with this defence spending and, argue I'm the only person who is stable enough on the world stage to prevent an outbreak of war. But look, all of this can change. If this is to be believed here, what's written in The Sun, that we could be at war with Russia, well, then he's going to have to re-strategise, isn't he? Because it's not going to look so strong and stable.
But another criticism on Keir Starmer is the Greens, and how during the local elections they really focused, didn't they, on reform, and it was the Green Party and the surge of the Green Party that they didn't have a narrative about. Front page of the Sunday Times now reporting on a poll that says Green vote would surge and would cost 3 cabinet ministers their seats.
Yeah, that's right. So the Green Party would quadruple their seats to 22 MPs. They're now 5. And half of Starmer's cabinet would lose their seats as well. So it would be 16 out of 22. 12 would go to Reform and 3 to the Greens, which is what this story is about. But I think, obviously, this is an MRP poll. It's by more in common. It's a long way until the next general election, of course. And I think what's quite, stark in that is that Reform actually emerges as the winner. They would get 324 seats, which is just shy of an overall majority. So actually, should Keir Starmer be more worried about the threat from Reform, as he has been before the last few months and before the Gorton and Denton by-election? Or, I'm just interested to see whether the strategy will change again, because it's no question that now with the threat coming from a possible leadership contest from Angela Rayner, as I said, the Gorton and Denton by-election, they'll strategise again and change it going forward towards Reform.
And then circling all of this have been calls from some that a change of leadership at the top of government should come. Should Starmer stand aside? Call time on Starmer is this piece written by Sacha Lord in the Mail on Sunday, Ava. And it's hard to quell this type of criticism. It's hard to be that Prime Minister at home, dealing with local issues, dealing with the cost of living crisis, when the bins are collected, how much council tax people pay, rents. Is Keir Starmer the person that Labour should stick with? Essentially, this article in the Mail on Sunday is asking.
Yes, Sacha Lord has held several positions around nighttime industries. He's sort of like a night czar, he certainly was, at least in Greater Manchester. And he's also a very heavy donor to the party at one point in time. And the argument that he's making today in the Mail on Sunday is that, look, I believed in Rachel Reeves, I believed in the vision of Keir Starmer, which is why I donated to the party. And now I'm looking what's happening to pubs, particularly around the profit margins on a pint. A lot of pubs only making a 12 pence profit margin. I'm also looking at the increase in business rates. Well, the decision not to maintain the decrease in business rates. And, he's arguing that actually this is not a government that cares about local business and is one that's actually hemorrhaging local business. But these are the sort of local issues that people who are going to the polls in May care about. This is what you feel this viscerally in your pocket. If you haven't got cash to go out and have a pint, or you haven't got cash to fill up your car because the petrol's too expensive, you're not going to vote for the government of the day.
No. Was it a wrong move for Andy Burnham to be blocked, do you think? Looking back, it's always easy, isn't it, retrospectively?
It's always easy. So far, so much has changed since the Gorton and Denton by-election, and the conflict in the Middle East, I think, has changed the picture completely. But Labour MPs were incredibly angry about that. I don't think they've forgotten. But looking at things now, it was probably a good thing indeed.
It will be one of those moments that people will be talking about for a long time to come, not least Andy Burnham, that will continue to, be a big voice.
Yeah, we know that he is sort of, looking about for other seats that he could potentially run in. But the issue is that the last reason that was given by Keir Starmer and the NEC was that he is currently the Mayor of Manchester. So until he stands down, he's not going to be allowed to...
And a popular mayor, actually.
Very popular mayor. But he won't be allowed to stand anywhere else as an MP, so he'll just have the same cycle over and over again. But, Keir Starmer privately admitted multiple times to several confidants that, he just didn't want to have the burden of a potential leadership challenge or someone making headlines every single day. He's sort of like, to him, he's sort of a fly. He's a gnat who's sort of, around him every single day when he's sort of trying to project the vision of stability. And you've got a challenger like Andy Burnham, it wouldn't have been politically viable for Keir.
OK, let's talk about the front page of the Sunday Telegraph now. Phillipson betrayed women on rights law.
That's right. There's Baroness Faulkner, who drew up the equality law changes after the that landmark Supreme Court ruling, which basically ruled that sex inequality laws means biological sex, and that has had a huge impact on businesses, public bodies who are now reviewing all their policies. And the Equality Human Rights Commission was tasked to come up with a code of practice for all these businesses and public bodies, especially when it came to like single-sex spaces and what that meant, especially toilets and changing rooms and so on. And they submitted their guidance to the government and to Bridget Phillipson, who's the Equalities Minister, but she hasn't published anything. She's reviewing it, and there's lots of delays.
Brilliant stuff. We'll have to leave it there, Martina. Ava, thanks for your company. Thanks for watching at home.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist